Chapter 773. Melinda did not know why. This was the person she was most afraid of, but when she heard him say that, she felt strangely at ease. Blushing, Melinda didn't have time to think about anything else when she felt a warm breath on her ear. Instinctively, she shrank her neck to avoid it, but Carter's hand was already on her face. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the side of her face was pressed against his chest. His heart was beating wildly. He didn't know if it was because he was worried that he had accidentally hurt her, or because she was willing to be so close to him. He only knew that when he saw her blush, his body reacted faster than his brain. He wanted to hug her. He really just wanted to hug her. Melinda did not struggle or resist. She seemed to be in a daze and allowed Carter to hug her for a long time. Fei Rui was unhappy and wanted to separate them, but was held back by Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng shook her head lightly. "Isn't it good to have another reliable person to protect her with you?" Fei Rui was stunned for a moment. He carefully observed Carter's and Melinda's expressions before slowly withdrawing his strength and turning to leave. After hugging for a long time, Carter released Melinda. It was not that he had enough, but he did not dare to ask for more. He wanted to hug her and never let go. But if he hugged her any longer, she would angrily push him away. He was prepared to be scolded by Melinda, but his careful gaze met Melinda's momentary disappointment. Maybe she liked his hug. Stunned for a moment, Carter immediately hugged Melinda back into his arms. He would hug her like this until the end of time. However, Melinda had already regained her senses from that momentary chill. She pushed Carter away and walked to Gu Mengmeng's side. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. She hid behind Gu Mengmeng with her head lowered, clearly still resisting Carter. Gu Mengmeng pretended not to see anything. She pulled Melinda along and chatted happily. She helped Melinda put on the pearl earrings and sighed sincerely. He pulled Melinda to the beach and asked her to look at the reflection in the water to see if she was satisfied with the result. However, Melinda's eyes subconsciously peeked at Carter through the reflection in the water. Gu Mengmeng pulled Melinda back and pretended to be nonchalant. "Carter, what do you think of this earring? Are you a good match for Melinda?" Carter's eyes were still on Melinda's face. Meeting her cautious and expectant gaze, Carter smiled bashfully and dotingly. "Very beautiful, very beautiful." Gu Mengmeng clearly saw that Melinda's face had turned red, but she refused to let it go. "Then is the earring prettier or Melinda prettier? You have to speak clearly." Kate's expression did not change. "Melinda is beautiful. She is the most beautiful female in the world. She is the essence of all things beautiful." Chapter 774. After resting for 2 days, Fei Rui and Carter brought their tribesmen to fetch Gu Mengmeng to the Forbidden Abyss on the morning of the 3rd day. Compared to the first time they entered the sea, it was a little more extravagant this time. Gu Mengmeng was wrapped up in Wabiai's snake tail, feeling like an emperor leading his officials on a tour with a divine beast. Although this divine beast looked like a piece of tea soaked in water, but she endured it. After all, there were many fishes behind them and it looked rather intimidating. Elvis and Leah also wanted to follow but were rejected by Gu Mengmeng. Although the mermaid tribe's air bubble could allow them to breathe underwater, if they met with any accident and the air bubble burst, they would definitely die at that depth. Moreover, even if the air bubble was fine, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea was also a serious problem. Beasts who lived on land for a long time would be half dead just by going down. Why was Gu Mengmeng fine? Nonsense, she had Snake's Beast King powers and the kiss of the beast deity from her lonely father. Of course she would be fine. When they neared the so-called Forbidden Abyss, Gu Mengmeng finally understood why Fei Rui said the messenger of the beast deity had to come personally. It was clearly a flowing sea, but it was filled with a thick layer of poison. It was as if the poison was continuously seeping out from the depths of the sea, so thick that even the sea could not melt it. Fei Rui and the rest swam to this point and could no longer go any nearer. Their expressions were solemn as if they were suffocating. Gu Mengmeng didn't want to force them, so she asked them to retreat. She and Wabiai could go down alone. Fei Rui was worried, but he also knew that with his powers he would only cause more trouble if he went down. So he instructed Gu Mengmeng not to force herself, and to retreat if she felt something was wrong. She must not force herself. Gu Mengmeng made a reassuring gesture and asked them to retreat further and not be affected by the poison. Fei Rui and Carter said that they would meet her at the entrance and wait for her to come out. Gu Mengmeng didn't reject them. She just led Wabiai into the deepest part of the pitch-black darkness without any source of light. Gu Mengmeng had inherited Elvis's night vision, so her fear of the dark had already been reduced to its lowest point. But the absolute darkness and the absolute silence still gave her a creepy feeling of uneasiness. Gu Mengmeng instinctively grasped Wabiai's hand, but Wabiai said irritatingly, "Don't you know how strong your claws are? If you break my arm later, you can do it yourself if you encounter any danger." It had to be said that Wabiai's words effectively dispelled Gu Mengmeng's fear. That's right, in the entire beast world she was already the strongest among the strong. If she met with any danger, she could just release her beast pressure and suppress it. If it was some kind of demon or ghost, didn't she have a lonely old man's father to back her up? *CK, she had someone on top of her too, okay? He was a legitimate second-generation immortal. Because of Snake's tear of the beast deity, Gu Mengmeng's body was now immune to all poisons, because there was nothing more poisonous than the blood in her body. Fighting poison with poison, it was only natural that the weaker side would be completely devoured. However, Wabiai clearly did not possess such strength. The deeper he went, the denser the poisonous fog became. Wabiai was starting to feel a little powerless. Gu Mengmeng didn't want Wabiai in front of her, so she asked him to return and wait with Fei Rui and the rest. But Wabiai said, "If I leave you alone, you can forget about raising your head in front of him for the rest of your life." Digression. Yeah, today's update is over. Chapter 775. Gu Mengmeng wanted to say that there was no need to compete in such a place. She had the protection of the kiss of the beast deity and her abilities were not affected in the water. Even without Wabiai it would not be a big problem. But Gu Mengmeng also knew that males had their own pride and dignity. Sometimes they would view certain things as more important than their own lives. She did not hesitate too much because any further hesitation would only cause Wabiai more pain and suffering. Nodding, Gu Mengmeng said, "If you can't hold on, go back immediately. I will not blame you and neither will Snake. On the contrary, if anything happens to you, I will not be able to answer to Snake." Wabiai tucked Gu Mengmeng under his armpit and charged into the abyss in his half-beast form. He raised his speed to the maximum, clearly wanting to end the battle as soon as possible. His tightly furrowed brows and a solemn expression that she had never seen before proved that his current condition was not optimistic. But he still gritted his teeth and said, "I don't need you to answer to him about my life." In the poisonous fog in the deep sea, there was nothing but flowing water. Wabiai's speed was so fast that Gu Mengmeng could only feel the poisonous fog whizzing past her ears. Her body was sinking rapidly. But how long did she sink? How deep and how far did she sink? How long did she sink? Gu Mengmeng could not be bothered. But when Wabiai's body finally stopped, Gu Mengmeng could clearly see that the scales on his tail had already been corroded by the poisonous fog, revealing the flesh underneath. There were also many festering spots on his chest. It was not fatal, but it was still a ghastly sight. Wabiai spat out a mouthful of saliva that was mixed with blood. He raised his hand to wipe it off and laughed as though he did not know his limits. "You want to compete in poison with me? In this life only Snake is more poisonous than me." Seeing his stubborn look, Gu Mengmeng retracted her hand that was about to support him. Sometimes she had to know how to hold back her pity to save a man's face. Gu Mengmeng smiled and patted the parts of Wabiai's body that were still intact. "Not bad, I thought you couldn't hold on any longer. Kiske, the only one who can kill me in this world has already been destroyed by you," Wabiai said with unclear emotions before surveying the surroundings. The poisonous fog hovered above their heads like a thick, dark cloud, while the area under the poisonous fog was unbelievably clean. Gu Mengmeng consciously sucked in a mouthful of seawater and swallowed it, only to realize that it was not salty. In other words, the part under the poisonous fog was not seawater but freshwater, and it was the kind of freshwater that was similar to mineral water. This was very strange. Gu Mengmeng did not know what kind of topography would cause such a situation to occur. Could it be related to the poisonous fog? However, Gu Mengmeng did not have much interest in surveying the geography of the seabed. She just walked along the path that was paved with mud from the seabed. Speaking of which, it was very strange. There was clearly still water below, but there was no water flowing. It was clearly the same seabed mud, but there was a forest path that formed a sharp contrast with the mud beside it, as if it was guiding her forward. After taking 2 steps, Gu Mengmeng realized something was wrong. The speed at which her feet sank was getting faster and faster, but it was getting harder and harder to pull out. Underwater swamp? Gu Mengmeng frowned and wanted to swim across the sky. Chapter 776. Gu Mengmeng tried to walk around from the side of the small path, but she realized that the suction force from the side was stronger. She had just placed her feet lightly on the ground when there was already a force sucking her in, almost sucking her in. Wabi used his snake tail to lift Gu Mengmeng up onto his head. He had already transformed into his original form. The huge snake head was as big as a train and Gu Mengmeng sat on it stably. The thick snake body slithered along the path like a fish in water. Gu Mengmeng giggled. Luckily Wabi had insisted on coming down with her. Otherwise she really didn't know how to get down. Little shit, I didn't expect you to be so reliable. Gu Mengmeng patted Wabi's head. Wabi stuck out his tongue and said to Gu Mengmeng in snake language, "If you call me little shit again, do you believe I won't throw you into the mud?" Gu Mengmeng shrugged. "I don't believe you." Wabi gritted his teeth and didn't reply. Because he didn't believe it either. Because of Wabi's cheat-like nature, they reached the end of the path after about half an hour. It was rather boring and nothing happened. Then, Gu Mengmeng was even more confused. The ocean behind them was like a huge water ball, rippling with water, but the light was blocked off. And the place they were at now was actually dry and filled with air. It was not an underwater cave or any other land. They were at the bottom of the ocean, but the ocean was behind them, as if there was an invisible wall of water blocking off the ocean. Not a single drop of water flowed in. Wabi had also transformed back into his human form. And the miraculous thing was that his injuries had actually healed. Not only that, Gu Mengmeng even felt that his skin had become better than before. She had heard that there was a sea mud face mask that was selling well, but she didn't expect the effects to be so good. Gu Mengmeng secretly decided that she would dig some up when she returned later. It would be good to give it to her friends and family as local specialties. Right? Wabi also noticed the changes on his body, but he didn't take it to heart. He just urged Gu Mengmeng to hurry on. Not long after, Gu Mengmeng saw a huge clam shell. It's just a dried clam shell. As expected, not all demons and ghosts could live for more than 1,000 years. Gu Mengmeng went forward and wanted to pry open the clamshell to take a look. But the moment her hand touched the clamshell, it cracked and shattered into pieces. Was it eroded by the wind? Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She pushed the shredded clamshell to one side and found a pearl the size of a fist. It was black and glowed with a dark green light. It was faint and gave off a mysterious vibe. Gu Mengmeng weighed it in her hand and looked around to see if there was anything else. She thought to herself, was this the kiss of the ocean? A black pearl. Chapter 777. Gu Mengmeng was stunned by the scene before her the moment she entered the poisonous fog from the fresh water. The poisonous mist swirled, and like the drain of a bathtub that had been opened, it gradually disappeared from the drain. And this drain was the black pearl in Gu Mengmeng's hand, the kiss of the ocean. What the heck? Don't judge a pearl by its cover. Gu Mengmeng stared in bewilderment as the poisonous fog swirled into a huge whirlpool like a tornado. Then the thinnest part of the fog was rapidly sucked into the black pearl. She didn't know how to react. After a long while, when Gu Mengmeng regained her senses, the poisonous fog had already thinned to the point where she could vaguely see what was going on 3 to 5 meters away. Amidst the dilution of the seawater, there was a sense of ink-stained beauty. Gu Mengmeng thought about how Wabi had to swim for half a day to bring her down. No matter how powerful the pearl was, it would take some time to absorb the fog. It would be too much of a waste of time to swim back after it was done. Not to mention Fei Rue and Carter, Alvis and Leah didn't know what was going on down there. Wouldn't they go crazy seeing her taking so long to return? So Gu Mengmeng leaned over to Wabi and said, "Let's swim back as we swim. I don't think we can finish absorbing the fog in such a short time." Wabi had originally come with Gu Mengmeng. He wasn't interested in the poisonous fog, nor the kiss of the ocean. So when he heard Gu Mengmeng's words, he nodded and held Gu Mengmeng under his arm as he swam back slowly. He even intentionally swam towards the areas with the thickest poisonous fog so that the pearl could absorb the fog faster. Before they could swim out of the poisonous fog, Gu Mengmeng smelled blood. She instinctively frowned. Could it be that the giant fish tribe and the mermaid tribe had gotten into a fight again? Hey, why were these fish more aggressive than lions and tigers? Gu Mengmeng was worried that Fei Rui would be at a disadvantage, so she asked Wabi to speed up. The closer they got, the more Gu Mengmeng felt that something was wrong. The sounds of fighting were rather loud. It didn't seem like something Fei Rui and Carter could create. After all, with Fei Rui's small physique, he was nothing in front of Kite. It was a one-sided abuse. It was impossible for him to cause such a ruckus. Furthermore, Carter still wanted to woo Melinda, so he couldn't kill Fei Rui. If he really beat Fei Rui up, then he could forget about developing a relationship with Melinda that was more than friendship in this lifetime. Gu Mengmeng choked on her saliva as she charged out of the poisonous fog. It was not a problem with the seawater, but the blood content of the seawater was too high. Gu Mengmeng almost doubted her own eyes. What was going on? Did he swim into the burial pit of the sea race? Why were there so many corpses of the sea race? Although they had been beaten back to their original forms and were just fish, Gu Mengmeng could clearly tell that they were not ordinary fish, but from the ocean tribe. But after returning to their original forms, Gu Mengmeng could not recognize any of them. The corpses of the sea folk were different from those of ordinary fish. When ordinary fish died, their corpses would float up, but the corpses of the sea folk would sink. After the poisonous fog thinned, the corpses would slowly sink into the poisonous fog. Their bodies were already wounded and they did not have a strong resistance to poison. As a result, even after 80% of the poisonous fog had been absorbed, their corpses continued to rot in the poisonous fog until not even their bones were left. Chapter 778. Wabi led Gu Mengmeng and continued to swim upstream. They could already see people fighting. Huge waves surged beneath the surface of the sea. The battle between the sea tribes was even more brutal than that between the wild beasts on land. Gu Mengmeng tried her best to distinguish between friend and foe, and finally found Fei Rui and Carter under the guidance of that head of golden hair. At that moment, the two of them were being attacked by another member of the sea tribe. From the looks of it, that person should also be third level. It was hard to say who would win if he fought Carter head-on, but Carter had to deal with him while protecting Melinda at the same time. It was inevitable that he was being attacked from both sides. Gu Mengmeng quickly swam over and turned to protect Fei Rui and his sister behind her. She faced the enemy's attack head-on and smiled coldly. She didn't even raise her hand. The attacker didn't hesitate at all because of Gu Mengmeng's appearance. Not only did his movements not slow down, they even became fiercer. In just an instant he adjusted his angle slightly. He was going to take Gu Mengmeng's life. However, before that sword-like nose could reach within 3 steps of Gu Mengmeng, it stopped abruptly. The attacker frowned and suddenly turned back to look. His heart skipped a beat and his face contorted in shock. Fear contorted his face and he didn't even have time to shout for help before half of his body was bitten off by Wabi. Blood spread across the sea like a red spider lily blooming in the sea. It was demonic and strange, carrying with it a strong aura of death. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Wabi threw away the half-fish wrapped in his snake tail in disgust. Then he watched in disgust as it slowly sank into the poisonous fog of the abyss, gradually rotting and dissipating. Twisting his neck, he scanned the surroundings. That gaze was just like looking at food. Great messenger. Fei Rui grasped Melinda's hand and pushed her to Gu Mengmeng's side. Great messenger, please help me take care of my sister. If we all die here today, please bring her back to Saint Nazir. Even if she becomes partners with a land beast, it's fine as long as she survives. As he said that, Fei Rui glanced at Carter. Carter pursed his lips but didn't say a word. The other party had come prepared. They had concentrated their attacks on Melinda from the start, forcing him to stay by her side to protect her. He could only watch helplessly as his people were scattered by the other party and killed one by one. Now that the giant fish tribe had suffered heavy losses, it was doubtful if they could even survive to the end, much less protect Melinda. He wanted to have her, but compared to his own wish, her survival was more important. She was so beautiful and kind that no matter how vulgar the land orcs were, they would still take pity on her. If it was the tribe of the messenger of the beast deity, she would have a good life. Clenching his fists tightly, Carter slowly took a step forward, ready to fight. It was the sorrow and heroism of a warrior who would never return. But just as he took a step forward, his waist tightened. Melinda hugged Kate's waist from behind and said in a nasal voice, "I'm not leaving. I want to be with Kate. Even if we die together." Chapter 779. Carter and Melinda had no idea what Gu Mengmeng was saying. They only saw her gently nudge the three of them away from the battlefield before instructing, "All members of the giant fish tribe and mermaid tribe, retreat behind your tribe leaders." As soon as he finished speaking, the scattered clansmen retreated in a sorry state. The enemies were intimidated by Wabi and didn't dare to move. They could only watch helplessly as they left. "Is there no one else on our side?" Gu Mengmeng turned back and asked. Carter scanned the surroundings and nodded. Gu Mengmeng smiled slyly. "Children, it's time to eat." As soon as he finished speaking, countless water snakes surged out from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. Then they gradually tightened the encirclement and gathered the enemies again and again. Those who attempted to break out of the encirclement or escape would immediately be bitten by the agile water snakes for a second. In less than 3 seconds, they would no longer have the strength to struggle. Then the water snakes would bite their heads and slowly swallow their entire bodies into their stomachs. The others didn't dare to escape anymore. They cowered and moved closer to the center. And in the center waiting for them was the beast form Wabi. His bloody mouth was wide open as if waiting for them to jump into his mouth. Retreat. There was no way out. There was a huge disparity in power. It was supposed to be a sure-win situation, but the moment that female appeared, the tables were turned. Damn it, when did these snakes appear? All the enemies were surrounded by the snakes like sardines in a can. With Wabi's mouth, he would probably finish them all in 2 mouthfuls. "Wait a minute." Gu Mengmeng chuckled and gestured for him to stop. The snake beast's encirclement stopped shrinking and Wabi also transformed back into his half-beast form out of boredom. He used his tail to sweep up the person who had just spoken and threw him in front of Gu Mengmeng. Fish in the water would never be in such a sorry state. Although he was thrown out, he still landed steadily in front of Gu Mengmeng. He straightened his body and looked rather arrogant. "Greetings, great messenger." Gu Mengmeng sized it up and chuckled. "Oh, so there are stray beasts in the sea too." That person stood up straight. It was not strange that his identity as a stray beast had been exposed. After all, although his side had the numbers of a tribe, they were not united. On land, tribes lived together, but in the ocean most tribes were united. Furthermore, the females in the tribe would not mate with outsiders to ensure the purity of the tribe's bloodline. This was also one of the reasons why Melinda was so resistant and evasive when Kate expressed her desire to woo her, even though she had saved Kate. Although the stray beasts are beastmen abandoned by the beast deity, the beast deity should not have sent the great messenger to kill us all, right? I wonder why the great emissary wants to interfere in our dispute today. That person was rather strong-willed. He didn't think that it was wrong for him to initiate a massacre. After all, this world was ruled by the strong and it was the right thing to do. Gu Mengmeng smiled at the person in front of her. "Of course the beast deity did not order me to kill you all. Otherwise, do you think you still have the chance to talk nonsense with me?" Gu Mengmeng slowly and appropriately released a bit of pressure. It was very subtle and not a lot, but it was enough to make people shiver. The pressure of a beast king. That person gritted his teeth and lowered his head in submission. The reason was simply because he was submissive to the strong and had a deep-rooted fear of a superior. Aside from the topic, explain why there were clearly water snakes around but no one came out to rescue them just now. These water snakes were brought out by Wabi. Since Wabi did not say anything, Gu Mengmeng did not intend for them to appear from the start. After all, the sea tribe seemed to be very afraid of snakes. He did not want to create panic. Gu Mengmeng did not expect someone to attack her the moment she went down to retrieve a pearl, so she did not give the order to protect them. And snakes were cold-blooded by nature. To them, the life and death of others was just a trivial matter. They would not care. Chapter 780. There was still a bunch of weaklings behind her. After the previous battle with the stray beasts, Gu Mengmeng already knew the importance of controlling her emotions. She had been working hard to control her beast pressure over this period of time, and had achieved some success. Seeing that the person who came out to negotiate had given in, There was no need for her to continue pressuring him. After all, what if Melinda was scared to death before the stray beasts? As for why I want to interfere in your dispute, you have to ask yourself. Gu Mengmeng smiled condescendingly. Don't tell me that you stray beasts who have been banished by the various tribes just happened to meet them and wanted to exterminate them when you passed by. Why not? Stray beasts do not follow the rules. That person was a little guilty but still forced himself to look calm. Gu Mengmeng replied with an, "Oh. So stray beasts do not follow the rules. All right then, let's leave the stray beasts to them to settle." Gu Mengmeng took a step forward and slapped that person's shoulder, sending him back into the water snake's encirclement. Gu Mengmeng's strength was so strong that even a fish could not resist the force. When he could barely steady himself, he felt a pain in his lower body before he could say another word. Turning his head, he realized that his lower body had already entered Wabiai's mouth. The snake's venomous eyes were vertical, emitting a chill that made one's entire body shiver. But he did not even have the chance to beg for mercy before he was swallowed into Wabiai's mouth and died. If it was in the past, Gu Mengmeng would definitely be a little afraid when faced with such a scene. But after inheriting Snake's memories, she was very clear on one thing. That was to be merciful to one's enemy was to be cruel to oneself. She had already heard the water snake's report. These stray beasts had planned to kill Carter, Fei Rui and the rest, then disguise themselves as them. When Gu Mengmeng emerged from the abyss, they would suddenly attack and snatch the kiss of the ocean. But they didn't expect a few things. Firstly, the poisonous fog didn't kill Wabiai, nor did it weaken Gu Mengmeng. Secondly, they underestimated Fei Rui, Carter and the rest. They didn't expect that they would rather risk their lives to stay here and provide support for Gu Mengmeng. They were clearly not powerful, but none of them tried to escape. If Gu Mengmeng came back later, looking at the less than 20 people left behind, Gu Mengmeng's heart was bleeding. How majestic was the scene when they arrived. In less than half a day there were less than 20 people left. Gu Mengmeng hugged Fei Rui's arm and grinned. Our little shit looks ferocious when he eats. Don't scare Melinda. Let's return to the shore first. Fei Rui and Carter turned back to look at Wabiai. The absolute disparity in strength was on full display in front of him. Chapter 781. The moment she broke through the water, the ripples on the surface of the sea shattered the afterglow of the setting sun. The orange-red light shone on her body, making her look like a warrior returning from a blood-soaked battle, exuding an inexplicable sense of heroism. Elvis rushed to the shore and pulled Gu Mengmeng over from Fei Rui's hands. He used his chest to warm her up and scanned her body with his X-ray eyes. He only heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was unharmed from head to toe. Leah wrapped Gu Mengmeng up in a beast skin that was already warmed up. He looked up and did a head count. He frowned slightly but didn't ask anything. When they had left, there had been a huge crowd. But when they returned, there were only 2 or 3 of them left. Fei Rui and Carter were still bleeding, while Melinda looked haggard and there were over 20 people behind them. It was easy to guess what had happened without asking. Leah and Elvis were well aware of how much Gu Mengmeng valued human lives. They didn't want her to shoulder all these lives on her own. They observed Gu Mengmeng carefully. Seeing that she wasn't too affected, they felt a little more at ease. But what they didn't know was that Gu Mengmeng could already control her emotions well. It wasn't that she was numb to death, but because she knew that the dead were gone. She had to look forward, she had to be brave. Only then would the people around her not be affected by her depression. Think about how her emotions had tormented Elvis and Leah the last time. She had to love her own men. She couldn't possibly keep crying and worrying Elvis and Leah every time something happened, could she? Gu Mengmeng spread out the black pearl in her hands for Elvis and Leah to see, saying, "This thing is quite rare. I want to go down again tomorrow to suck up all the poisonous fog that has not been sucked dry, in case it pollutes the water source." What poisonous fog? Elvis's heart twitched as he asked coldly. Gu Mengmeng explained the situation at the bottom of the sea, including how she went down, how she obtained the kiss of the ocean, what she had encountered on the way back, and what Wabiai was doing when he didn't follow up. Elvis and Leah were trembling with fear. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to strangle this troublemaker. Why did she run to wherever there was danger? The poisonous fog was so thick that even Wabiai could not withstand it, and she dared to rush in without blinking? With her delicate skin, could she be more resistant to corrosion than Wabiai's snake scales? No matter how Gu Mengmeng explained that she was fine, Elvis and Leah were sure that she had been corroded by the poisonous fog to the extent that a layer of her skin had been peeled off. Well, no matter what, I've gotten the kiss of the ocean back. But Gu Mingming's gaze landed on Carter's and Fei Rue's faces, then back at Melinda, who was still in a state of shock. The Mermaid Clan and Giant Fish Clan suffered great losses in order to receive me. I cannot just leave like this, Leah said while wiping her hair. I don't care about other things, but don't mention anything about going into the sea again. Gu Mengmeng turned her head and protested, I still want to take in the fog, how can I not go into the sea? Leah did not back down. Let Wabi absorb the poisonous fog with this stupid pearl. You stay on the shore obediently. Gu Mengmeng said, I won't. Leah chuckled, his gaze gentle and affectionate. He whispered into Gu Mengmeng's ear, you have to believe. Elvis and I have 100 ways to make you lose the energy to go into the sea again. Do you want to try? Chapter 782. What kind of joke was that? Try. He was not stupid. Just Elvis alone could easily make her unable to get out of bed for 3 days. Now with Leah, if these two shameless fellows really went all out to teach her a lesson, she would really be dismembered on the bed. Seeing Gu Mengmeng admit defeat, Leah smiled regretfully. He hooked Gu Mengmeng's little chin and said in a slightly resentful tone, I still wanted to try forcing Polly. What a pity. Gu Mengmeng blushed and pushed Leah away. She then looked at Fei Rue and Carter and said, there are only so many of you left. It is not practical to split into 2 tribes. Why don't we merge? Fei Rue doted on his younger sister. He could see that Melinda's feelings towards Carter had changed and he could not bear to disappoint his sister. And Carter was even more so. He could give up his life for Melinda. What else did he have to protect? But there had never been a mixed tribe in the ocean. Although there were only over 20 mermaids and giant fish tribes left, they did not know whether to call themselves the mermaids tribe or the giant fish tribe. Melinda was also in a difficult position. She obviously hoped that her brother and Carter could become a family. She did not want to leave either of them. But it was a heavy topic to decide on which tribe to make disappear. No matter what she chose, one side would be hurt. This was not something she wanted to see. So Melinda took a step forward and looked at Gu Mengmeng. She said timidly, the great messenger saved all of our lives today. She's our benefactor. We are willing to listen to the great messenger and merge the 2 tribes together. But as for the name, could we trouble the great messenger to help us decide on it? Gu Mengmeng looked at Melinda and felt a sense of pity for her. She was really different from those coquettish bitches outside. Even if girls saw her, they wouldn't think that her delicateness was fake. Instead, they would really want to hold her in the palm of their hands and protect her. It was the kind of feeling that any girl in front of her would want to become a strong woman and not let others bully her. Gu Mengmeng thought that if she could give birth to a daughter one day, she would definitely send her to Melinda to be her godmother and let her raise her. She would also raise a well-bred socialite like Melinda. Melinda was practically the epitome of what all mothers in the world called other people's daughters. It was 2F** king rare. Gu Mengmeng could not resist Melinda's request. Zhang Xian nodded and pondered for a long time. However, when it came to naming things, the more cautious one was, the less one would be able to come up with an idea. Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and asked Leah, what would God's blessing be translated into the beast world's language? Leah replied, bridges. Gu Mengmeng felt that it sounded rather nice, so she turned to look at Carter and Fei Rue. What do the 2 of you think? Chapter 783. Why should I be angry? Gu Mengmeng was at a loss. Fei Rui lowered his head. You clearly didn't receive the beast deity's blessings, yet you used such a name. This is disrespectful to him. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. Who said you didn't receive the beast deity's blessings? Fei Rui looked up at Gu Mengmeng in a daze. His sparkling eyes shone with a glimmer of hope. Gu Mengmeng pulled Melinda over and planted a light kiss on her forehead. It was just like how the beast deity had kissed her forehead in the dream realm. Gu Mengmeng said with a sense of blessing, you all risked your lives to protect the beast deity's daughter. How could he not bless you all? Melinda blushed all the way to her neck from Gu Mengmeng's kiss. It had nothing to do with love or hate. It was just a kind of excitement. It was as if you were suddenly invited to a meeting by the premier of a country. Not only did the premier not put on airs or keep a distance, he even shook hands with you and said, "Child, you did very well in your exams. I am praising you on behalf of the country. If it were you, you would also blush." Gu Mengmeng looked at Fei Rue and Carter. She smiled. "What do the two of you think? If you don't like this name, you can give me a name you like. I have no objections. After all, this is your own tribe. You have the right to name yourselves." Fei Rue and Carter exchanged glances. Then they bowed to Gu Mengmeng. "Bridges will forever follow the great messenger. I will be your most reliable servant in the ocean." Actually, Gu Mengmeng didn't intend to recruit servants. Although she liked a senior from the swimming club, she wasn't that passionate about swimming. Now that she had taken the kiss of the ocean, she probably wouldn't return to the beach for no reason. But after she left, it would be difficult for this small tribe of over 20 people to survive in the ocean. If her name could bring them some protection, then so be it. Nodding her head, Gu Mengmeng finally accepted the loyalty of the Bridges tribe to her. Fei Rue was originally the prince of the tribe. He should be the next tribe leader. Carter was the first to speak. He gently held Melinda's little hand, his determined eyes filled with tenderness. He had given all his tenderness to Melinda and had nothing left for the world. "I just want to stay by Melinda's side. I don't care about anything else." Fei Rue shook his head and said, "The strength of the patriarch directly determines the strength of a tribe. I know that I'm unable to support the prosperity of a tribe like Bridges. You should be the patriarch. Although I don't like you, I can't deny your strength and talent. Furthermore, my sister is a princess after all. How can her first partner be a mediocre person?" Carter still wanted to say something, but Fei Rue suddenly laughed. Without giving him a chance to speak, Fei Rue continued, "Also, after you have mated, I want to return to Saint Nazir with the great messenger." When he said this, everyone present was shocked. Elvis scooped Gu Mengmeng back into his arms. His powerful aura engulfed everyone, making them want to kneel on the ground. His face darkened and he looked like he was about to tear Fei Rue apart. "What do you want?" Fei Rue was trembling in fear. His clear eyes were filled with grievance. He looked like he was about to cry. I want to learn the great messenger's new skills, and bring those magical skills back to the ocean." Aside from the topic, today's update has ended. A few black figures tiptoed in the night sky and slowly approached the sleeping Gu Mengmeng. He was secretly delighted in his heart. Although he was powerful, he was a little too arrogant and conceited. He actually slept so soundly. Wasn't he a little too careless? One hand slowly reached towards Gu Mengmeng, wanting to take away the kiss of the ocean from her. However, before his hand could even touch her clothes, he felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw that the back of his hand had already started to rot. Chapter 785. Tisk. After a soft sound, the black figure with a broken hand was thrown away. Leah swayed his large tail and said with a disappointed expression, "Do you have any professional ethics? Can you make such a loud noise when stealing? I can't even pretend not to see it. So unprofessional, you let me down." The few people who came along looked at each other. What did he mean? Gu Mengmeng sat up from Elvis's arms. Elvis's blue eyes were filled with love as he looked at her. He rubbed her little head and said, "In the end, I still disturbed your sleep, right?" Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "I knew they were following me. I couldn't sleep well." Elvis kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face lightly and said, "It's all right, I'll settle it soon." With that, Elvis stood up and walked step by step towards the few thieves who disturbed Gu Mengmeng's sleep. Even stray beasts have rules. Elvis stretched his neck to the left and right as a warm-up. In a flash, he grabbed the rat beast that was trying to escape and threw it into the sky. A huge eagle owl flew past at a low altitude, and its two claws that were like metal pincers dug into the rat beast's flesh, directly throwing it into the sky. A cry of agony could be heard from 300 meters away, followed by scattered pieces of flesh falling from the sky. A gust of wind blew past and the eagle owl circled in the sky before landing steadily on the ground. He already looked like a sickly young man, his face as white as the moonlight and without a trace of life. His gaze was cold and not sharp, but it was as if he was strangling the throat of the person being stared at, causing fear to rise in one's heart. And all this happened in just 3 to 5 seconds. Taking another step forward, Elvis was like Satan in the dark night, emitting a dangerous aura around him. He was like the king of hell that could not be disobeyed. His words rang in the night sky, like a divine decree from Azura, sending chills down one's spine and making one submit. You can take it by force, but you can't steal it. And you guys have broken this rule. One of the stray beasts was so intimidated by this aura that his legs turned to jelly. He retreated and wanted to escape, but suddenly he seemed to have kicked something and a shiver shot up from the bottom of his feet. He did not even have the courage to look back. The snake's cold tongue licked his neck, and a lazy and slow voice rang in his ears, carrying with it an indescribable malice and ridicule. Supper? It doesn't look very delicious. Before he could even scream out in pain, his lower body had already been tightly wrapped by the thick snake tail, while his upper body was already in the snake's mouth. The remaining 3 ambushers exchanged glances and quickly locked onto their target, Leah. Although Ian and Leah were 3rd-level orcs, they did not have much of an advantage against land beasts that could fly. Chapter 786. The second stray beast that attacked Leah was grabbed by the wrist by Leah. With a snap, his arm was dislocated. It was not forcefully broken but from the joints. The flesh was still connected but the bones were broken. That arm was like a pendulum that had lost its power, hanging down casually. TSK, stretching out your claws in front of the witch doctor. Looks like you really don't want your claws anymore. Leah nimbly ducked under the other arm of the second stray beast and hid behind his back. At this moment, the third stray beast's claws had already pierced through the chest of the second stray beast and was heading straight for Lee's throat. Luckily, Leah was not sticking close to the second stray beast's back. Instead, he was 1.5 steps away, so the third stray beast's blood-stained hand missed. He retracted it and threw the second stray beast's corpse onto the ground without any guilt. Leah patted his own chest. You scared me to death. I almost got touched by you. He's so annoying. Our Meng Meng doesn't like others touching me. There was only one of the 3 stray beasts left, and it was the only 4th-level orc among the 3. Given Lee's current abilities, it was very dangerous to go against him. In order not to be attacked from both sides, Leah had decided to get rid of the 2 3rd-level beasts first. But even if it was a one-on-one battle, it was still very difficult to retaliate with the difference in levels. Apart from Gu Mengmeng, he did not care about anyone else's life or death. Ian wanted to step forward to help Leah but was held down by his shoulder by Elvis. Ian looked at Elvis in confusion, but Elvis turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. With Gu Mengmeng's current abilities, helping Leah was just a matter of beckoning her finger. But she did not move at all. She just clenched her fists tightly and stared at Lee's battle. She did not even have the intention of asking Elvis to help Leah. Then, Elvis's gaze was gentle. The corners of his lips curled up into a beautiful curve. Leah had been seen through. The stray beast's fangs pressed towards Lee's spine. If he bit down, Leah would be crippled even if he did not die. Leah, I won't allow you to get hurt. Gu Mengmeng sat on the spot. Her voice seemed like a slight ripple, but it could not conceal the waves hidden within. Her voice was trembling. She was afraid. This knowledge made Leah hesitate. Should he continue pretending? If the way he did it for her good made her worry, then would he still persist? You can't. Because he had already hurt her once for her own good. He absolutely could not let it happen a second time. With a sweep of its fluffy tail, it sent the stray beast flying. The tip of his foot touched the ground lightly, but his entire body bounced up as if he had stepped on a spring. In an instant he landed behind the stray beast that had been sent flying and kicked his lumbar vertebrae. The huge impact and Lee's kick caused the stray beast's spine to crack. He flew out in a strange manner, just like a broken doll that did not receive the slightest bit of pity. Then a layer of moonlight enveloped Lee's body, making him look like an elf in the dark night. The bloodstains on his body were not hideous, instead they looked like poppies blooming on the other shore, exuding a fatal temptation. Chapter 787. Gu Mengmeng cupped Lee's face and gave him a deep kiss. It was a lingering kiss. Leah, congratulations on leveling up. Leah didn't reply and just hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms. This little one was too shrewd now. It was getting harder and harder to deceive her. But this difficulty made him feel an unprecedented sense of bliss. She was paying attention to him like this. She didn't say anything, but she knew everything. After half the night, coupled with the blood and corpses all over the ground, it looked like a slaughterhouse. There was no way she could sleep in this place. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng in his arms and used a beast's skin to cover her head to let her catch up on her sleep. Meanwhile, the few males continued their journey towards Saint Nazaire. It was normal for males to not sleep for a few days and nights. They had to stop and rest every night just to take care of Gu Mengmeng's routine. Although Gu Mengmeng didn't need to do anything in the middle of the night, she was still very nervous. Now that she was at ease, her deep sleepiness couldn't be dispelled no matter what. She slept all the way until noon when she was woken up by hunger. When the sun was at its hottest, it was the most torturous for Wabiai. He lay lazily on the tree, his head drooping, not wanting to talk to anyone. He did not sleep, nor did he move. He just sat there like a rubber snake. Although Ian could fly, his strength was at its peak at night. During the day, he looked even more lethargic and listless, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He was a male, but he looked as if he was suffering from anemia due to menstruation for 30 days a month. She didn't know what was going on. Seeing how weak he looked, like a little sister in the forest, Gu Mengmeng felt that not feeding him was torture, not to mention letting him hunt. So, Elvis handed Gu Mengmeng over to Leah and went out to hunt. Gu Mengmeng sat in Lee's arms and stroked his large tail. She exclaimed in surprise, your tail seems to have become thicker after you leveled up. Seeing that Gu Mengmeng liked his transformation, Leah couldn't help but smile. He said, the appearance of the Snow Fox tribe will change according to their level. Gu Mengmeng turned around and looked at Lee's face carefully. Lee was good-looking to begin with. Coupled with his otherworldly aura, he looked like a demon or a deity. Perhaps after looking at him for a long time, Gu Mengmeng had become immune to it, so she had not carefully scrutinized Lee's facial features for a long time. Gu Mengmeng then looked at his eyes seriously after he mentioned it. Her eyebrows looked a little thicker than before. She looked a little less charming and more heroic. His tall nose seemed to have narrowed a little, becoming a more standard Western tiger's nose instead of the Oriental lion's nose. The tip of his nose was firm, making his facial features more three-dimensional and deep. A pair of long and affectionate eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, pouring a pool of deep love onto Gu Mengmeng's face, as if she was the only person in the entire world who could see him. His thin lips did not have a single wrinkle and looked as perfect as a work of art carved by God. His slightly opened mouth was like an invitation, making Gu Mengmeng feel an urge to immediately offer her lips to him. Lee's face was even more perfect than before, so perfect that every angle was like a masterpiece. Chapter 788. It's broad daylight. What nonsense are you spouting? Gu Mengmeng blushed and lowered her head. However, Leah replied with a meaningful, oh. His lips moved closer to Gu Mengmeng's ear, his warm and ambiguous breath sprayed onto Gu Mengmeng's earlobe. With a hoarse voice, he said in an ambiguous tone, so, this is an invitation? You can pamper me at night, right? She did not know if it was a psychological effect, but Lee's hormones seemed to have increased after he leveled up. She should have been used to being teased, but after being teased for half a year, she could no longer resist Lee's advances. Lee's fingers slid across Gu Mengmeng's arm from her shoulder to her wrist. His fingertips seemed to carry an electric current, causing Gu Mengmeng's body to go numb. The only place she could hide was to lean deeper into his arms. Leah was satisfied with Gu Mengmeng's little action, but his hand landed on the kiss of the ocean in her hands. He tapped it twice nonchalantly and said, the kiss of the ocean can absorb the poison left behind by Elvis in your body. If you eat it, our mating problem will be solved. Gu Mengmeng looked at the fist-sized black pearl in her hands and twitched her lips. Are you sure you won't choke me to death? Leah lightly knocked Gu Mengmeng's head. Silly girl, who asked you to eat it whole? I can crush it and then you can eat it. Gu Mengmeng had thought Leah was just joking around with his suggestion. Seeing that he was really prepared to crush it, Gu Mengmeng panicked. She pulled the kiss of the ocean back into her arms and frowned. No, this is Qishuan's ransom. You cannot touch it. Leah sighed and did not touch the kiss of the ocean again. He just hugged Gu Mengmeng and said, what should I do? I am jealous. MMM. The top of Gu Mingming's head was pressed against Li's chin. She could not lift her head to look at his expression and could only respond with a single word. Leah said, Elvis is your first partner and is more important to you than me. I admit that. But now even the little wolf pups are more important than me. Mingming, my heart hurts. Gu Mingming smiled helplessly. You are all my family and equally important to me. But Qixin is in a more dangerous situation now, so I have no choice but to prioritize him. I know. Leah said, I also promised not to make things difficult for you. I understand the logic, but I still feel very disappointed. I was too greedy, wasn't I? I want to be the most important person to you. Gu Mingming hugged Leah and leaned her face against his chest, saying softly, I'm sorry. Li's heart skipped a beat. He pursed his lips and chuckled. You know very well that I prefer your confession to an apology. Without any hesitation, Gu Mingming said softly, I love you. Leah then smiled contentedly and did not say anything else. He had committed a taboo. He should not have fought for the most important in front of Gu Mingming. Back then, when Gu Mingming wanted to give him the only one, he was the one who forcefully pushed her into Elvis's arms. Later, Mingming asked him to give up. It was he himself who said that even if he could only be a beast pet, it would be fine as long as he could stay by her side. But now he was already her legitimate partner and he could confidently hold her in his arms. However, people were always greedy. Chapter 789. Actually, you could have leveled up a long time ago, right? Gu Mingming pressed her little face against Li's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Although it was a question, it sounded like a statement when it came out of his mouth. Leah chuckled and did not deny it. Gu Mingming continued, I thought about it many times after that. Previously, when we were attacked by stray beasts, although you were caught in a pincer attack, the other party was also a third-level orc. With your third-level energy reserves, as long as you broke through the boundary, you could use the level system to turn the situation around. But you seem to rather be injured than leveling up. I always felt that it was strange until last night, when those 3 stray beasts attacked you together without any discussion. Only then did I understand what you were thinking. Li's face carried an indulgent smile throughout. He had always disliked others guessing his thoughts, especially when his thoughts were seen through. He would be very resistant and immediately force himself to hide his emotions even deeper. But when he was seen through by Gu Mingming, he felt a faint sense of excitement and anticipation. It was as if his carefully wrapped present was opened by his beloved, and with just one look, the other party knew how much effort he had put into choosing the present and how meticulously he had wrapped it. The feeling of his efforts being seen and cherished was really good. It was so good that the blood in his entire body warmed up, nourishing every cell in his body. Tell me about it. Leah coaxed Gu Mingming to say more of her thoughts. He liked to hear her describe her thinking process, because he could not enter her brain to see clearly how she looked when her mind was filled with himself. So he treasured every word she explained to him, and even more so he treasured the lively expression on her face when she talked about topics related to him. Gu Mingming did not know how Leah was feeling when he looked at her. His gaze towards her was always affectionate and she seemed to have gotten used to it. But thinking about the reason why Leah was unwilling to level up, Gu Mingming could not help feeling a little heartache. She sighed softly and said, You didn't level up because you wanted to focus all the danger on yourself when we encountered a situation like yesterday, using yourself as bait to ensure my safety. His heart trembled. His Gu Mingming was so sensitive he felt warm and proud but also a little uneasy. As sensitive as she was, she couldn't accept his kindness with a clear conscience. Gu Mingming looked up and met Li's eyes. She said seriously, You clearly know that I am already strong enough now, you don't need to do this anymore. Silly girl. Leah rubbed Gu Mingming's head. The sunlight passed through the leaves and landed on his face, bringing much warmth to his smile. He pulled Gu Mingming's little hand to his lips and kissed it before continuing, No matter how strong you are, you will always be my weakness. If you are even the slightest injury, it would be my heart. I have a strong recovery ability. I'll be fine tomorrow or the day after. Gu Mingming frowned and looked at Elvis. You promised not to lie to me. A 5th-grade orc had been bitten by its prey during a hunt? Why don't you say that a wolf jumped into a rabbit's nest and was eaten by the rabbit? Chapter 791. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and took a deep breath. She stared into Elvis's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Elvis felt guilty from her stare. Gu Mengmeng was too observant now and it was too difficult to hide anything from her. Xiaomeng. Elvis opened his mouth wanting to beg for mercy. But Gu Mengmeng didn't give him a chance. She raised her head and shouted, Lia Ian Wabiai. Follow me. Gu Mengmeng pushed Elvis and jumped down from his arms. The three people who were called out did not say a word and just stood a step behind Gu Mengmeng. Xiaomeng. Elvis wanted to say something but stopped himself. He wanted to call out to her but didn't know how to start. Gu Mengmeng frowned and looked at the wound on Elvis's shoulder. Feeling vexed, she shook her head and said, My man was bitten to this extent. If I don't pull out all his teeth, I am not Gu Mengmeng. With that, she turned to leave. Lia glanced back at Elvis with a conflicted gaze, but he didn't say anything. He carried Gu Mengmeng and walked in the direction Elvis had come from. There was a rustling sound in the bushes and Gu Mengmeng knew that it was the little snake that Wabiai had brought out from the Snake King Valley. She instructed, Lead the way and find the person who bit Elvis for me. The little snake hissed and stuck out its tongue, replying to Gu Mengmeng in snake language. Then it shot out in all directions like an arrow released from a bow, fanning out in a carpet search. How could Elvis let Gu Mengmeng leave just like that? Even if she had the powers of a beast king and a fifth-level pervert like Wabiai was by her side, she was still his female. How could he be at ease if she rushed in without knowing anything? He quickly chased after her, wanting to pull her back from Li's arms. But Gu Mengmeng turned her head to show her rejection. Xiaomeng. Elvis sighed and finally gave in. I will tell you the truth, all right? Don't be angry, all right? Gu Mengmeng then turned to look at Elvis. The words lie and you will die were clearly written on her face. Elvis was not afraid of the heavens, the earth, pain and death. But he was extremely afraid of this delicate little person in Li's arms. There was nothing he could do when she was angry. The stray beasts here are old acquaintances of mine, Elvis said with a frown. Gu Mengmeng was stunned. Old acquaintance? Could it be? Elvis nodded and said, This is where I was born. Under Gu Mengmeng's signal, everyone stopped in their tracks and just stared at Elvis. Gu Mengmeng sighed and opened her arms towards Elvis in Li's arms. Hug. Elvis chuckled and took Gu Mengmeng back from Li's arms. He kissed her face and took in her scent greedily. Only then did the uneasiness in his heart slowly dissipate. Wabiai and Ian tactfully retreated far away, leaving space for the family of three. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng to a big tree and with a leap he sat on a branch. Gu Mengmeng sat steadily in his arms, while Lia chose a branch that was slightly lower than Elvis and Gu Mengmeng to lie on, raising his head to look at Elvis and Gu Mengmeng. Elvis calmed his emotions and said slowly, The person who bit me is my blood-related father beast. Lia and Elvis quickly straightened their bodies and entered a state of alertness. They knew very well that Gu Mengmeng's senses were sharper than theirs. Gu Mengmeng sat on a tree branch and pointed at the bushes not far away. She smiled and said, Since we are already here, why hide? The bushes shook a few times and a male stood up from the bushes. He was tall and burly, exuding an indescribable aura from his body. He looked very much like a darkened version of Elvis. His genes were so strong that there was no need for a DNA test. Aside from the topic, yeah, Daddy Elvis would be online tomorrow. So, today's update ended again. Impossible, I have other uses for this. Gu Mengmeng rejected him confidently. Elvis's father seemed to have expected that Gu Mengmeng would not agree so easily, so he lowered his shoulders slightly and stretched his shoulder blades. Since that's the case, I can only rely on my own abilities to snatch it from you. Her malicious and murderous gaze landed on Elvis. I heard that he is your first partner. Let's start with him. If you change your mind and are willing to give the kiss of the ocean to me, tell me. If it's in time, it might be able to save his life. Chapter 794. Both of their fighting styles were swift and fierce. Every move was aimed at fatal spots, and there was not the slightest bit of sloppiness in their movements. Gu Mengmeng also became nervous. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to control her emotions. A cold sensation wrapped around her ankle. Looking down, she saw a familiar snake tail wrapping itself around her. Wabi. Gu Mengmeng was puzzled. Wabi yawned nonchalantly. Only by protecting you can your little wolf have nothing to worry about. Didn't you realize? That fellow only needs to create the illusion that he is going to attack you, and your little wolf will be distracted. And he will always be on the defensive. Even though they are evenly matched, they are already at a disadvantage. Even though they knew that no one in the beast world could hurt her, she was still their weakness. These words were not just empty words. Indeed, after Wabi protected Gu Mengmeng tightly, Elvis's passive situation was alleviated. Although he had already suffered many injuries, his gaze was more focused and his judgment sharpened. Including the time in the ocean, Gu Mengmeng had fought with stray beasts twice. She knew that the stray beasts' fighting style was brutal and ruthless, but she didn't know they could be this wild. If a battle between a proper tribe and a stray beast was like an NBA basketball game, exciting and tense, with no mistakes allowed and every shot determined the outcome of the game, then the battle between Elvis and his father was like an underground basketball game with a life and death contract. Winning and losing was not just about the game but also about life and death. So, unless Elvis died or killed his own father with his own hands, this battle would not stop? Was he going to force his own son to this extent just for the kiss of the ocean? Gu Mengmeng really couldn't understand the family relationships in the beast world. She thought that Elvis and Kamwa's interaction was already weird enough. Who knew that it was already the gentle version? Mengmeng, are you going to eat the kiss of the ocean? Leah suddenly asked. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for 2 seconds before she immediately smiled. Yes, I am going to eat it. That way no one will keep thinking about it and steal it. As expected, Elvis's father panicked the moment she said that. He didn't even care about his battle with Elvis or Wabi who was protecting Gu Mengmeng. He pounced at Gu Mengmeng, prepared to snatch the kiss of the ocean from her hands. The moment he revealed a flaw, Elvis bit his thigh without hesitation and pulled him back forcefully. He threw him onto the ground and stepped on the back of his waist, looking down on him like a messenger from hell pronouncing death. His face was cold and calm as if even the most basic fear towards death had disappeared. A trace of regret flashed in his father's eyes, but he immediately felt relieved. He coldly snorted, "The winner takes all. If you want to kill me, then kill me." Elvis had no intention to be courteous with him. He raised his sharp claws and dug straight for his heart. Wait. Gu Mengmeng opened her mouth and only used 2 words to disperse Elvis's murderous aura. The claws transformed into human hands in midair and Elvis tilted his head to look at Gu Mengmeng, as if waiting for her to continue. Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis didn't have a good impression of his father. Even if he didn't know what had happened in the past, Gu Mengmeng still had the ability to tell the truth. But Gu Mengmeng still couldn't kill her own father with her own hands. Chapter 795. I can't give you the kiss of the ocean, but if you are willing to tell me what you need it for, maybe I can think of other ways to help you. Gu Mengmeng pushed Wabi away and walked to Elvis's side. Opening her arms, she made a gesture of asking for a hug. She wasn't afraid of Elvis's murderous aura, but she hoped that she could bring Elvis peace and happiness. Killing might be the simplest and most direct way to solve problems, but it would never make one happy. Her man shouldn't struggle in the midst of killing. Elvis had never resisted Gu Mengmeng's closeness. It was the same at all times. He carried Gu Mengmeng up, then retreated warily. Wabi stood lazily between Elvis and his father, while Leah stood half a step in front of Elvis. Even Ian was hidden in the treetops in a defensive position. There were also countless little snakes waiting in the bushes. As long as Elvis's father made the slightest misstep, these few forces would rush out to tear him to shreds and slaughter him. He sighed. Could be said that an ambitious man was short of breath. He forced himself up. As a stray beast, he knew all too well how passive his current situation was. Death was clearly the release he had always been seeking, but he couldn't die now. He couldn't let go of the person he originally hated. If he, the leader of the stray beasts, died, what would become of that person's situation? He should be feeling the thrill of revenge, but his heart just clenched painfully. I want to use it to save someone. Elvis's father said. Who? Gu Mengmeng asked. Elvis's father hesitated for a moment, but still raised his hand and pointed at Elvis. His mother. Your wife. Gu Mengmeng blurted out, but immediately realized that she had said something wrong. If Elvis's mother was his wife, how could he have become a stray beast? So, as expected, Elvis's father shuddered as if a sharpened bamboo had pierced his heart. Gu Mengmeng knew that she had said the wrong thing, and that an apology would be too pretentious. She changed the topic. What's wrong with her? Elvis's father's gaze was a little cloudy. He lowered his head and said with difficulty, She's dying. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She turned to look at Elvis. Elvis's face was expressionless, as if he was listening to a story that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't that he was cold-blooded, but he was too unfamiliar with the word mother. In his entire life he had never felt any warmth from his mother. On the contrary, almost all the suffering he had suffered in his childhood came from that female. Sympathy, it was too difficult for Elvis. But he had never mentioned all these to Gu Mengmeng. It was not that he did not want to be comforted, but he did not want those ugly memories to appear in her memory. As long as she was by his side, it was already a great comfort. Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis did not have a happy childhood and suffered a lot. She did not want to force Elvis to forgive his parents, but at least let them live. This way, when Elvis wanted to forgive them one day, he would have the chance to hear that, sorry. Leah. Gu Mengmeng turned towards Leah. Leah was the professional when it came to saving lives. Chapter 797. The layout of the cave reminded Gu Mengmeng of the water curtain cave in Journey to the West. Apart from the fact that there was no waterfall at the entrance, any monkey would be able to pull up the great sage equaling heaven's flag with a pole. She really couldn't tell that this was the cave of a stray beast leader. She had thought that stray beasts lived in places that were as grand as the Lion-Camel Ridge. Taking a few steps in, she saw a thick bed made from animal skin. A female lay on it, so skinny that she barely resembled a human. Gu Mengmeng shot Leah a look and he walked up to check on her condition. Surprisingly, she didn't have any external injuries or internal illnesses. She just looked like she was about to die. Leah looked at Peter and asked, "How long has she been like this?" Peter frowned. "She has been like this since the end of the monsoon season. She refused to eat and has been starving." Gu Mengmeng instinctively glanced at Elvis. Elvis's expression was indifferent and he didn't react at all. He really treated this female as a stranger. Gu Mengmeng sighed. "You guys go out first. I want to talk to her." Elvis surveyed the surroundings. After confirming that this female was alone, he didn't have anything to worry about. He turned to leave first. Peter was worried but had no other choice but to follow. After everyone left, Gu Mengmeng sat beside the female. "I am Gu Mengmeng. I am Elvis's partner." The female's eyes brightened at that. Her first reaction was to look at the cave entrance. But Elvis had already walked far away. She couldn't even see his back. There was a moment of disappointment, but it wasn't too obvious. She just lowered her head and didn't say a word. "Shall I call Elvis in and let him talk to you?" Gu Mengmeng probed. The female seemed to hesitate for a moment before shaking her head. "I don't have the face to see him. As long as he is alive, that's enough." All mothers were the same. How could they not dote on their own children? Gu Mengmeng saw that the female was willing to talk about Elvis, so she continued asking. "Elvis has never been willing to tell me about his childhood. But I am actually quite curious. If you are willing, why don't you tell me about Elvis when he was young?" The female's gaze dimmed. Her eyelids drooped and even her fingertips trembled. "His childhood was a disaster. You shouldn't have brought him back here. It wasn't easy for him to escape." Thinking about how Elvis and his father met, Gu Mengmeng could almost understand what the so-called disaster was about. "But I heard that you're very sick. We can't just leave you to die. After all, you are Elvis's mother," Gu Mengmeng said. The female closed her eyes slowly and a teardrop fell from the corner of her eye onto the beast's skin. "Elvis, perhaps he wished that he never had a mother like me. You guys go, don't worry about me. This is the price I should pay. Gu Mengmeng did not understand what she meant. She just felt that the teardrop was really sad. Maybe you can tell me about your difficulties. Maybe I can help you. The female shook her head. He won't agree. No one can save me. I'm already very satisfied to know that Elvis is safe and sound before I die. I can die without regrets. But even so, she actually endured for nearly half a year. Chapter 799. After that, I even started to persuade Peter to stay. In order to prevent him from hurting my males, I even took the initiative to seduce him. The female's gaze remained blank, as if she was narrating someone else's story in the third person. It would not hurt so much if it had nothing to do with her. It was then that I became pregnant with Elvis. At the mention of Elvis, the female instinctively looked towards the entrance of the cave. Unfortunately, there was nothing there. Although I did not love Peter, it was my first pregnancy after all. I was still very happy. But Peter was forcing me to choose between my children and my only remaining companion. He said that if I wanted to keep my partner, I had to mate with him until the child was miscarried. If I wanted to keep my child, then he had to leave this cave immediately until I gave birth. But the price was that the 2 remaining marks on my body would disappear. Gu Mengmeng frowned. She could understand if she said that she could not tolerate other males because she was too possessive. But wasn't it too perverted to mate until the child was miscarried? After all, it was his own flesh and blood in that womb. The female seemed to have seen Gu Mengmeng's expression, or rather she did not care about Gu Mengmeng's reaction. She just needed an outlet to vent all the emotions that she had not dared to express all these years. I was ultimately selfish. I wanted to keep my child. So that night, the 2 marks on my chest disappeared at the same time. Even though I kept praying for them to escape, they still died. For the sake of the child in my womb, I forced myself to live on. I had to live on. So no matter how much I vomited or how much pain I was in, I gritted my teeth and persevered. But when my child was not even a month old, he took them all away. I was imprisoned in this cave, unable to see the light of day. In order to see my child, I gave up my pride and everything to please him. But all I got in return was one nightmare after another. Out of the 6 wolf pups, only Elvis survived. He kept using Elvis to threaten me. As long as I showed the slightest sign of disobedience, he would torture Elvis. I did not even dare to die. During the rainy season, I finally knew that my Elvis was so strong that he could no longer hurt me easily. I could finally be at ease. Finally, I am free. He killed my partner, killed my son, imprisoned me here and tortured me. And after so many years, even my hatred has been worn away. True despair is when I don't even have the desire to kill him for revenge. There's nothing in this world that I'm reluctant to part with anymore. Be it love or hate, there's nothing left. Gu Mengmeng quietly listened to her finish recounting the past, not interrupting in the middle. Until she had finished, she slowly closed her eyes, looking as if her heart was as still as water and only wished for death. Gu Mengmeng then tested the waters. Maybe I can bring you away. Bring you to Saint Nazir to live with me and Elvis. In this case, are you willing? The female's eyelashes fluttered. Gu Mengmeng's words were like a pebble thrown into the calm lake in her heart, causing ripples to form. Hence he kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face and said, "We haven't had lunch yet, I'll go prepare something delicious for you. Auntie looks very weak, so I'll prepare some good food for her." Gu Mengmeng understood everyone's consideration, so she nodded and returned a kiss on Li's cheek. "Thank you." Leah lightly scratched Gu Mengmeng's little nose and smiled. "Silly girl, why are you thanking me? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.